By the time you're hearing this, I would have already crossed the border because I'm going on a trip and I have to pre-record some videos. So why not go out there and talk about some of the extra little tidbits, just the fly hairs of the NHL world, and talk about these things collaboratively. Because they're kind of the same idea, kind of not. Today we're having a discussion about the Detroit Red Wings as well as the Edmonton Oilers, because when it comes to former top players who are now old and who are on these teams on expiring one-year contracts, we have ourselves some pretty interesting discussions to have in regards to, one, Patrick Kane of the Detroit Red Wings, as well as Corey Perry of the Edmonton Oilers. Now, we're going to pretty much have the same conversation twice in this video with both of these guys, so if you are an Oilers fan, you are a Red Wings fan, then hey, I'm going to have to force you to be patient here because not everything in this video is going to revolve around your team. But part of the reason I'm making this video in the way that I am is because of a Reddit post made on the Our Red Wings sub, as well as an article posted onto the Edmonton Journal. You know what? Article sounds a lot more proficient. Let's go out there and actually start with the Edmonton Journal piece written by David Staples. Take a look at this from earlier yesterday. Corey Perry wants to play another season, but will he do it with the Oilers? The pros of the pro. The article opens up by talking about how Bob Stouffer of the Oilers Radio Network recently mentioned that Corey Perry is interested in playing another NHL year. Based on what you've seen, would you prefer the Oilers to sign him if the price is right? Now, David Staples has a bunch of conversations, a whole bunch of different points here in this piece, talking about why this would be a good idea. 1. There isn't a corner or a net front in an NHL rink where Corey Perry isn't king. At least in his own mind. He drives in hard, fierce, and smart. Most often he finds some way to nudge the play in his own team's favor, even if he's been knocked off of his feet. He's the master of angling and stick-checking, using body and blade to unsettle and destabilize opponents, often winning the puck off of them. He's quite possibly the slowest forward in the NHL, but I'm not sure if there's a smarter or more determined one. This season, he's got 9 points in 27 Oilers games, which is about what he was getting on his various deep runs in the playoffs recent years. He's found a way to transform himself from frontline winger to a bottom-line grinder in a way that helps his teams win. In my mind, that makes him more than a pro player. He is the pro. An NHLer who has pulled off the rare accomplishment of transforming himself into a new role and making it work for both himself and the team. The article then says how you pretty much need these hard, aggressive, intimidating players, and that it might be a coincidence that Corey Perry has been on 3 recent teams that made it to Cup Finals: Dallas, Montreal, and Tampa Bay from 2020 to 2022, but it might not be a coincidence. Having seen him play for 2 months now, David Staples writes that he's more inclined to believe Perry helped those successful teams add the needed ingredients of aggression, gamesmanship, and fearlessness. He goes out there and says at the end here, we all have a better sense of Perry's merit once the 2024 playoffs comes to an end. Right now, though, I can't see how it would not make sense to bring him back if the price is right. Edmonton won't be able to pay him more than a fourth-line salary next season, but if he's willing to take that, why wouldn't Edmonton sign him? And so, opening up the conversation with Corey Perry, this is kind of interesting because he has produced fewer points than what he had in Chicago earlier this year. 9 points in 16 games with the Hawks versus 9 points in 28 games with the Oilers, and it's understandable to see why his point production tailed off with Edmonton versus Chicago. With the Hawks, he was more of a leadership veteran, top-of-the-line guy. There was a bigger role for him. He wasn't playing with as good of a team, so there was a lot more opportunity for him to take over shifts offensively. In Edmonton, though, he's taken like a back seat to a lot of these top-tier guys that can produce points, that can score goals. Perry has been a lot more of a depth option here in Edmonton, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. He's still good, he's still capable, he's still a pest. He still does what Corey Perry does, and that's very admirable in the eyes of most Oilers fans watching. So when it comes to this, I mean, you talk about some of the playoff numbers he has had: 9 points in 27 games with the Stars when they went to the finals, 10 points in 22 games with the Canadiens when they went to the finals, 11 points in 23 games with the Lightning when they went to the finals, and then 5 points in 6 games played when the Lightning lost in the first round to Toronto. So, Corey Perry has been on a bunch of Stanley Cup championship caliber teams, even going back to his Anaheim days where the Ducks were an absolute powerhouse in the West and they won that Stanley Cup in 2007. Perry knows what it takes, and he brings that winning culture, so the question then becomes, is that all the more necessary in Edmonton? If he's cheap enough, do the Oilers bite the bullet and say, okay, well, we only signed you because you were coming off of a pretty bad contract termination situation in Chicago, but we like you so much that we really want to keep you around. Can you please sign a smaller dollar amount contract? If Corey Perry says yes, there is no reason to believe why the Oilers would not want to get him on board. Now, on to the other veteran NHLer who is making himself known in this video. We're talking also about Patrick Kane and the Wings, because when it comes to a conversation brought up on the Detroit subreddit, I wanted to read this out to you here from Legendary Beaver. How likely do we think it is that Patrick Kane stays? I could see it, but I could also see why he wouldn't want to. We're no contender, and we won't be next year. Now, for those wondering, Patrick Kane, at the time of recording this audio, 5'10", 176, left-handed guy, signed till the end of this season making $2.75 million a year. Patty Kane is legitimately a point-per-game player with the Detroit Red Wings. 41 points, 42 games played. He has been very, very good. And one of these guys where it's like, if he had just played the whole year and he was as good the whole year, let's say Patrick Kane gets a 75-point season in Detroit, who cares if he was a part of Chicago this entire time and he was a big rival and thorn in the side of many Wings fans? He's here now and he's doing amazing things. But because his contract is expiring, the question is, did Patrick Kane use this stint in Detroit more so as just a tryout period, an evaluation segment for other teams to say, hey, he's actually still doing well, he can do well after that surgery, only for him to get some sort of a bag next year or play with another contender next year, or does he like it enough in Detroit to stick around and want to come back? You could see both sides of the fence, to be honest, because the fact that the Wings put all their stock into signing Kane in the first place, the fact that they did their due diligence and they were super open and honest about everything they wanted to see out of him, that's why Kane came in the first place. Also, the geography helps as well, as it's talked about in the comment section of this Reddit post. Desperate Trifle goes out there and says, Kane's dad doesn't have to drive far for games, and he's close to Chicago for family stuff. He likes to brink it, and he's made his money. And on top of that, he chose Detroit despite getting offered more money from other teams. Even if the teams suck, Detroit's hockey culture is awesome and the fans here are ride or die. I think he stays at least another couple of seasons. The Analog Kid 18 says, I think Kane stays. He wanted to sign for 2 years here, but Steve got him at 1 for obvious reasons. He wanted to play here even before the season started, as soon as we got to Brinkett. I think he stays. Mary Archie Archery says, I think he likes Detroit, the leadership, and the team. I also think he wants to play with Cat. If he wanted to sign with a contender, he would have done so this season. When he signed with us, he knew he wasn't signing with a contender, but I'd bet my behind he totally had the opportunity to do so. We were not the only team wanting to sign him, and there were other teams better positioned for a cup run when that was going down. I think he stays. Now, there is a devil's advocate reply saying when he signed with us, there weren't any contenders that were going to pay him what we could, and his ability to come back from the injury was widely unknown. Entirely different circumstances going into this offseason after he's proven he can be a point-per-game player still. And so, while there are some debates going on here, I feel like general sentiment from Wings fans is a little bit lax on this. Like, nobody's panicking, nobody's freaking out, because at this point, what reason is there to freak out? Sure, Kane doesn't have an extension for next year, but one of the biggest factors that he cited as for coming here was the fact that Alex DeBrincat is on Detroit, and DeBrincat is signed on for a while. The Wings and Stevie Y re-signed that guy to a contract extension that goes till 2026-2027. So if Patrick Kane wants to still play with his good bud in DeBrincat, it would probably be in his best interest to re-sign with the Wings, right? Unless he wants to go cup chasing, wherein he'll get himself a top role on a playoff contending team, maybe pull off a Corey Perry, but just better, and then he signs somewhere else in the offseason at that point. Maybe he keeps on signing one-year contracts and goes the NBA superstar route where he's just going wherever we'll hire him. Who knows? But when it comes to Detroit, there was a lot of goodwill built up here between Kane and the Red Wings, as evidenced by a lot of the opinions of the fans. So I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Do you think Patrick Kane will return to the Detroit Red Wings? And the same thing could be asked about Corey Perry and the Edmonton Oilers. Thoughts in the comment section about both of these guys. What are your opinions and what do their futures hold? I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.